Why does an economic bloodbath equal a rising stock market? Collection agencies eye the $1,200 stimulus checks. And national debt can never be repaid. It's $75,000 per U.S. citizen. We're going to talk about those things and more, how the debt can never be repaid. It's impossible. Hey everybody, JJ here. It is Bull to the Bust. It is Monday, April 13th. Thank you for joining me. Also, real quick to my patrons, I've got a new upload over on Patreon. It's a patrons only upload. Where'd it go? There it is. Just uploaded it last night. So I'll put a link down below to Patreon if you want to go check that out. It does help the channel tremendously when you do help us out in that way. And it helps us not have to worry so much about the Google algorithms and the suppression of our videos. Okay, first topic here, bullet point, economic bloodbath equals rising stock market. How can that be? We're going to talk about that. Now, first of all, today was down a little bit here, Monday, April 13th. But if you look at the recovery that we've had since the big sell-off, this is a one-year chart here. We've retraced almost 50% of the drop that we had seen, and we're closed today at 23,390. But here is the picture that tells 1,000 words. So since the bottom, the Dow Jones has seen its best week since 1938. So going back something like 80 years. At the same time that 16 million Americans filed for unemployment. So can you think of a more obvious example how far disconnected this stock market is from the real economy? Even people that have never paid attention to this, and people that think the manipulation is just a theory, are now actually starting to wake up. They're saying, wait a minute, what's going on here? Is there anyone out there still in the land of the walking dead that thinks this is a real market, that thinks the stock market's actually based on some sort of fundamentals or economic strength? Right? The only economic strength right now is coming out of the central bank. Right? The consumer's tapped out, and we've been talking about this for a couple years now. Now, unless another shoe drops, and I'm talking about another black swan event on top of the one that we're already in the middle of, then I think they're going to try to buy this election. Remember, we're in the first term. They could likely try to buy this election by pumping the stock market up, by pushing out more stimulus checks, by doing tax cuts. But I don't think it's going to work. These $1,200 stimulus checks, in many parts of the country, they're barely going to pay 1 month of rent for people. Right? What are these newly 17 million unemployed people going to do with $1,200? Sure, if someone's paid off and they live in an area that has low housing prices, maybe their home's paid off, they're completely out of debt, sure, it might be a good little bump up to their checking account, but sadly most people are in some sort of debt. And like I was talking about in a few previous videos, I think that 2020, the rest of the year, we're still going to see some shocking and unbelievable events yet to unfold on top of what we've been going through already. So we'll have to see what it's going to be. I don't know exactly. I'm guessing some big bank failures. If the Fed decides to let the banks fail, something tells me it's going to be a lot of smaller and regional banks, and that the bigger banks are still going to be propped up as walking corpses. Next topic, collection agencies eye the $1,200 stimulus checks. Now, we've already seen the first round of stimulus checks being sent out. These first checks are just going to be people that signed up for direct deposit with the IRS previously. There's going to be a big portion of these stimulus checks that just get repaid right to the banks, the same banks that are getting the bailout in many cases. People paying off their credit card bills, their car loan, people paying it towards their mortgage. But here's the really scary part if you're in debt. Here's what could happen. Many people on low incomes have unpaid bills and debt, and that can bring on debt collectors. And people should worry that Americans could get their emergency government paychecks snatched right out of their bank accounts. Take a look at this right here. This is an attorney. She's a lawyer with Legal Services of Alabama. She says, quote, "It happens all the time to people. Debt collectors often get court judgments against people, which enables the collectors to get the money from people's banks." She continues, "If debt collectors can find money sitting in a bank account, they can just grab whatever money is in there. So it's really easy for them to collect their money that way. Some states have protections, but many allow collectors to grab large sums of money." unquote. Right? So there you have it, folks. Just another reason why people could be more likely to be reluctant to put their money in a checking account. Not only do you have to worry about the failure of this fraudulent banking system finally collapsing and the bail-ins and all the other things we've talked about on this channel, but if you have debt, they could come right in and snatch it. Now, you'd have to check your state's regulations and guidelines, but this could be very well what millions of people are going to be seeing. Direct deposit in, direct withdrawal out, straight to the financial institution that you are in debt to. And the attorney continues, quote, "That is what really scares me. People that need this money are depending on it desperately right now, which is why the government is giving it to them. They could then turn around and lose it unexpectedly and not have any options," unquote. Now, there is currently a system that does protect some bank deposits from being swiped by debt collectors. And it's something right now that's done to Social Security deposits, and banks automatically know not to let collectors grab that money. And right now there's also the NCLC out there. They're trying to get these stimulus payments coded in the same way as the Social Security deposits, because this money was intended for helping people for food and basic necessities, just like Social Security. Right, last bullet point right here. The national debt can never be repaid. We have surpassed 24 trillion. We talked about that in a previous episode. That equals $75,000 per U.S. citizen. Per taxpayer, not counting the people too young or people that just don't pay taxes, $195,000 per taxpayer. Right, so the bottom line is America is bankrupt. We can never raise taxes enough to ever put a dent in this national debt. It's just not going to happen. Now, I think we're going to see a lot of pain for a lot of people, unfortunately. Also, take a look at this line down here. This is the U.S. debt, the federal U.S. debt to GDP ratio. Back in the 60s, it was about 53%. In the 80s, it was only 34%. And keep in mind, that's when we had the higher interest rates. Interest rates were up towards 20% at that time. In the 2000s, it was 58%. Now look at this to the right here, 112% federal debt to GDP ratio. Right, this whole thing is a house of cards. They're just prolonging the pain with all of these bailouts to the corporations, to the banks. And I've said this before, I think the reason why they did not let this implode and collapse completely and bring on the next Great Depression is because the president right now in the first term. Okay, the sickness that came out that's spreading across the globe is the scapegoat for the collapse, but I don't think the real blood is going to be spilled until later, and I mean the end of 2020. Right? Can you imagine what would happen if the government just decided to not send out any stimulus? As it is right now, the stimulus is barely going to make a dent in people's debt for the most part. And this is going to get real ugly real quick unless we do something drastic to get rid of this debt. And remember, the Treasury has merged with the Fed right now. No, the Fed hasn't gone away. Some people are saying that. It hasn't gone away. The entities still exist. It's just that the Treasury now has taken over the decision-making and the authority to issue debt, to do endless bailouts. And we'll have to see how deep and how far they take it, if they take it into hyperinflation. For example, if they did a universal basic income where people get an amount every month, that means you could still see consumers spending because of all this help they're getting, this continuous bailout or stimulus or universal basic income. So people will still have money to spend, but nobody's working and producing anything. So then you have supply shortages even worse than what you're seeing now because nobody's manufacturing, nobody's producing, everybody's sitting on their couch eating Cheetos, but still has money to spend. And that's where you see the hyperinflation, and that's going to be the worst kind of economic collapse or depression. And hope it doesn't happen, but I think we should prepare for it. Try to get some hard assets, things that are going to rise in value. Maybe it's property, maybe it's land. That's also risky. If you have properties, you may not find renters with enough money to pay your rent and cover your carrying costs. So even landlords are in a dangerous position right now. This is dangerous for everybody, except maybe the top 10%, and even a lot of them are having trouble right now. Like I said in a previous report, people making $100,000, $120,000 are still unable to buy a house here in California, or they're able to get a huge loan, but they're afraid to take out such a huge loan. So maybe it's only going to be the top 1% that are actually safe in this economic environment that we're going into. That's about all for this report, everybody. Thanks for watching. There's a couple links down there to support the channel if you'd like to help out. Even $1 a month goes a long ways through Patreon. Or something else you could do that's great is just give us a thumbs up and share these videos. Leave a comment. It helps our community down there. And please check comments. There's a lot of very smart people down there. And actually a couple of the news sources today that I used, I got out of comments. So thank you very much for your comments, for putting in links about news and about latest events. Thank you very much. Hope you come back to this channel for more. Bye, everybody.